Hi everyone, in today's video I would like to talk about 3 key ideas to improve your board vision. Now some brief definitions to make sure that we're on the same page. The board vision is basically what is currently happening on the board as opposed to other related concept which is the board visualization, which is what will happen in the next moves. So we could say that the board vision is more of a picture or a snapshot of the position, whereas the board visualization is more like a movie or what will happen next. So the 3 key ideas to improve your board vision are the material, the pawn structure, and the king safety. So I want to analyze a few positions to dig deeper into these ideas. So let's start with the first position and let's discuss about these 3 key ideas. Material is equal, the pawn structure is very similar, so here the pawn structure is very symmetrical. Both sides have a few isolated pawns. Regarding the king safety, both kings are very safe. So at first sight, we could say that the position is very balanced. In fact, objectively, this position is very balanced, but from a practical point of view, white is the one having a better position. Because if I take a look at the material, even though we have the same number of pieces, first of all, white has already connected rooks, so the rooks can get activated more quickly. The bishop on c8 still has to develop. So at least black has some problems to solve. So here white played the move rook a to b1, which is a very useful move, trying to get some activity on the b file. And here black tried knight to b6. We could argue that the move rook to b8 is interesting here to try to neutralize the rook on b1. But here after white trades, now the knight is going to its initial square. So we could see that white has more active pieces. In this position, white could continue with a move like rook d1, trying to get the d file, or knight to e5. So we have similar material, but the quality of the pieces is not the same. And in the game after knight to b6, attacking the bishop, bishop to e2, c5. Here white played the move rook f to c1. This is a very deep move, overprotecting the pawn on c3 because black might have some ideas of playing knight to a4, attacking the pawn on c3. And this rook will also support the advance of the pawn. And here after bishop to b7, king to f1, bishop to d5. Now we see the idea of the rook on b1, rook to b5, attacking the pawn on c5. Here black went knight to d7, protecting the pawn. If black takes on a2 after c4, this bishop is going to get trapped after rook to b2. So black went knight to d7, and after rook to a5, we can already see how white is the one pressing on black's position. So the position is slowly getting harder for black to play. Here black went rook f to d8, and after c4, bishop to c6, knight to e1, the knight will come to d3, will prevent any invasion by the rook on b2, and it will also put pressure on c5. So in this position, white has a slight advantage which he managed to convert. Now the previous position was very clear because material, pawn structure and king safety was very similar, but in this position we have a lot of imbalances. So let's start with the material. We have similar material because black has 2 bishops for a bishop and a knight, and this is an imbalance that very often leads to one side having an advantage. Normally the sides having the 2 bishops, particularly if the position is open. But here we have other pieces. If we continue analyzing the material, we have the same number of pawns. White has 2 rooks that are already fairly active, as opposed to black's rooks that are very passive. So we have a lot of imbalances material-wise. If we analyze the pawn structure, black has a better pawn structure because white has these 2 isolated double pawns on the b file. Isolated double pawns are very often weak, and this case is no exception. And if we take a look at the kings, the king on g1 feels a lot safer. Because white's pieces are better coordinated, we see that the queen is also eyeing the pawn on g7, so far it's defended. But taking that into account, white played a very brilliant move. Before we see that move, I just want to clarify a few things, that this position, if white didn't have these advantages of having the better king and more active rooks and a more active queen, we would get this position, which would actually be pretty much desperate for white, because black's bishops are extremely active, there's pressure on this pawn e5. In this particular position, this pawn e5 is more of a weakness. It can be attacked. For example, there's a threat of taking on f3 and then taking on e5. There's also ideas of going knight to c5, putting pressure on b3, so this position is clearly better for black. But since we have heavy pieces and white has a safer king, here is actually the opposite. White is the one having the advantage, and if white manages to attack the king, attacking the king is worth more than anything if the attack is successful. And here white could continue, for example, with a move like bishop to g5 or bishop to f4. This is an idea that might come to mind, just developing and then even preparing to double rooks on the d file. But white played even a nicer move, which is the move rook to a4. So the rook is ready to either go to the d-file, attacking the knight, or even go to g4, planning to put pressure on the king. Black tried queen to e8, breaking the pin on the knight on d7, and after rook to g4, black played the move g6, which will weaken the king further, but here black cannot defend with rook to g8 because here white can simply take on g7, and after rook takes, go bishop to h6, white is going to capture on g7. So here black tried g6, and after bishop to h6 and king to g8, we see how white's pieces are a lot more active. This rook on h8 is really miserable. White went knight to g5, white has a decisive advantage. One idea is to go knight g to e4 and then plan to invade. Black went bishop to f8, and after bishop takes and king takes, here rook to f4 was strong. White played rook to d4 before playing rook to f4 after bishop to c6, rook to f4, now attacking the pawn f7. Here black tried f5, which is quite desperate, but the point is that after taking on e5, white has the move rook to f6, attacking the knight and also planning to take on e6 since the pawn on f7 is pinned. In any case, I'm showing the rest of the game, but based on king safety, white is already winning. White didn't even sacrifice material for this. After f5, white took on f6, black's idea was to go e5, attacking the rook. Here white could simply move the rook, but the move queen to d3 is a lot nicer. Here black resigned, but the main point is that queen to d6 is coming and white will simply crush through. For example, after black takes, queen to d6 and king to f8, here the simple move f7 will fork the queen and the king. And before I move on with the last position, if you want to seriously improve at chess, I have a free course that will provide you with a training plan for that, so feel free to check the link in the description. So let's analyze this position, which is more of an ending. The other positions were middle game opening positions. Here we have a double rook ending. Rook endings are very common. Let's start analyzing the position. If we take a look at the material, both sides have 5 pawns each, but the pawn structure is quite different. White has 2 double isolated pawns, 1 isolated pawn. Black has 2 isolated pawns that are very well defended. Black's pawn structure is a lot better. The kings are both very safe. So based on the pawn structure and even having a more active rook, black has a clear advantage. And in this position, which is quite bad, white played the move rook to b3, making things easier for black. In any case, the position was very bad, because after rook to d4, black is going to collect the pawn on b4, and after rook to c1 and rook takes, rook to d1, black double rooks, attacking on b3, and after rook d to d3, a5, rook to c3, black went rook to e5, and after rook to d3, black went back to b5. And now, in this position, since we have an ending and the kings are fairly safe, black decided to activate the king by going king to f7. This is a typical idea in endings, to activate the king. And after king to e2 and king to e6, here black played the move king to d2, missing black's idea. After king to d2 and king to e5, black collected another pawn and won the game quite easily. But in any case, after a move like king to f3, black can go king to e5, putting more pressure on this pawn, and this position should be winning for black. Black has an extra pawn and much better pieces. White has to wait because both pawns are being attacked, and here black has a few ideas. Probably the simplest is to start pushing the queenside pawns, and then sooner or later trade pawns to create some very nice connected pass pawns. For example, after b6, if white goes rook to c3, black can go c5, and then after a move like rook to d3, we have to be careful about rook to d5, but after we neutralize this rook, if white waits, then after a4, we trade a pair of pawns, and now black will slowly but surely push these two connected pass pawns. So hope that you can use this idea to improve your board vision. Having a good awareness of a position will help you find good moves a lot more easily. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.